Team Miralab. I'm Amanda Tassi, and co-art lead on Miralab. We have Matt Kane, who's also co-team lead and is lead semester, and Brian DeVore, who we also have a new art lead, Kate Wong. She's Kate. You want to raise your hand in the back there? And we have a new Kevin Young. So Miralab. Miralab is a 3D PC-based game about discovering a beautiful underwater world as an immortal jellyfish. Solve the puzzles of this evocative ecosystem as you sit through the unique life cycle stages of this fascinating creature. Unlock memories of your jellyfish clones as you build up your immortal palace. And as before, we are still developing in Unity for PC download and Xbox controller. So our overall player goal, as before, is that you're discovering and unlocking more of the world and exploring it. And we're encouraging discovery of further parts of the world. But we've increased the mini goals within each area to give the player more of a design gameplay focus within each area and to emphasize more the unlocking of the different areas. So at the end of each area, we introduce a new predator that is in charge of that area. And we've also rethought how memory is incorporated within the game. So memory jellies are now collectible. As an immortal being, you have clones of different memory jellies of yourself that live within the entire world. And as you progress through gameplay and as you cycle through different life cycle stages, then you collect different clone memories from different lifetimes. As you collect these memories, then it builds up and makes your world more flourishing and makes your home base more flourishing as well. So last semester we had this really great memory mechanic where you could save and basically take a snapshot of any object within the world and then replace it. But overall, we needed to unfortunately cut that because we've needed to simplify the gameplay a lot in order to improve gameplay experience. But that was the way that we rethought memory. So overall, our game consists of 3 main levels. This is a side view, and our focus for this semester has been level 0 and level 1. And this is within an atoll coral reef, and this is level 1. Level 1 actually happens in a cavern below level 0. And as you can see by this basic level layout, all of the levels overlap one another, and you're transversing through the different levels as you progress through life cycle stages. So again, replayability of different areas and moving continually through this life cycle. So we'll go ahead and jump into gameplay now. One of the other main things that, one of our other main takeaways from demo was that we had developed the blob phase of the life cycle as a separate level area, and it felt too disconnected from other parts of the game. So we've worked on integrating the blob phase life cycle into the adult world, and you actually start the game now as a blob.
Hey guys, so I'm Matt. Yeah, so basically, like Amanda said, we're starting the game in blob phase now. This part's still kind of under development, but basically what we did is we took blob phase out of its separate instance level area, and it was actually kind of a lot of work to get it working within our main adult scene now. So now this kind of encompasses like one of our larger kind of shifts in our development strategy this semester, which is really integrating a lot of the gameplay in the same world and with less scenes. So we had a lot of scene transitions for demo day last semester that hurt legibility of the play space and kind of was disorienting. So now we're really pushing towards only really having a level transition only at the very end of each major level region. So yeah, basically the core basics of Blob are the same as they have been. You basically roll around and you eat food to grow up. But one of the reasons why Blob was in this instance level before was because it was kind of the core of a larger growing of the karma system kind of a thing, which we were actually pretty far through development, but we realized was really a mechanic that didn't fit into a 20-minute long game. The complexity associated with it was something that we couldn't really fit into an appropriately paced learning experience. So we really took a lot of that out, and we made it much more ingrained with just navigation through the adult space. And that's just another kind of theme that we are working towards, is building on our strengths and what was working well, and kind of cutting the idea of developing a lot more beyond what we have accomplished so far, and mostly just making what we have already that much better. And so basically Blob is part of the adult phase now, and it contributes to that experience.
So as you can see, Blob being integrated into the same game world as the adult phase, we still need to include the animation to show that transition in the main player character. But we've been able to capitalize on our custom shaders to show the difference in perspective when you're a blob versus the difference in perspective when you're an adult, as you just saw. And we'll continue to develop that transition to make it more and more fluid throughout the rest of the semester. So now you are an adult for the first time, and you are in a fissure cavern, and once Brian flies through this prehistoric fish skull, then you first see your hub home base, which you'll be returning to over and over throughout the game. That's that purple guy in the background. And that establishes that more clearly as one of the player goals within this realm. So within level 0, the main goals for the player that we want the player to experience are that the world is flourishing, that you're morphing through a life cycle throughout the game, that there's dynamic sound, that the hub is a goal, and that you can ride currents, which we'll talk more about in a bit. But in this area, you can see that we definitely pushed sense of scale. You are a tiny, tiny creature within a large reef. And so we scaled up a lot of our objects and really aimed to make them more flourishing, such as this kelp here, so that you definitely feel more immersed within this world. And you're still interacting with all of these objects, sparkly, different interactive objects. So we still have all those elements, but we've definitely been pushing the aesthetics and the sound, which, based on demo day feedback, people really enjoyed. So soon Brian will start to interact with different currents systems. So we've also introduced a spline curve current system. And here he's flowing through a psychedelic sponge. And we're still working on We're still working on the textures for the currents. We've been reworking those to make them more immersive. But now Brian is entering into a highway current system, and he's flying over an open valley, which we'll encounter later on. You play it later on in the game. Okay. But we wanted to make riding the currents feel more fun. So they're more curvy, you're going in spirals, and you're as like 2001 flying through the sci-fi underwater aquatic retrofuturism. Okay. So soon we'll be getting to the hub, which is Sharknado right now as a placeholder. But we'll be developing out the hub in more detail. We needed to rework it. We weren't happy with where it was at the end of last semester, so we'll be reworking that. Unfortunately without Sharknado, but maybe if you unlock an Easter egg, you'll get to experience that. And now we've entered into level 1.
So level 1 was one of the areas that we were happiest with at the end of last semester, and it's really where we break into a lot of the puzzle gameplay. Level 0 is kind of a prelude to that, and then so basically here's where we're going to do a lot of the meat of the game, and we were pretty happy with it. We got good responses to it, but we realized it was really difficult, and a lot of that came down to not necessarily execution all the time, but a lot of times just us not giving the players enough information for them to really understand how to solve the puzzles effectively, or by us not segmenting the information we were giving to the player enough, that it was just an information overload too quickly, and it just wasn't really fair. So what we really worked on trying to do was break down the logic of our puzzles and make them that much easier for the player to learn what they need to learn in this area and move on quickly without really undermining the learning benefit of it. Because the ultimate goal of this level is to move them on to the next one, which is where it really breaks into what we ultimately want to do with this game, which is much larger systemic environments that have puzzle elements associated with them. So another part of what we wanted to do, on top of kind of just breaking down the complexity of the puzzles, is kind of add in break rooms a little bit that are less puzzle oriented but give a little bit more of a sense of space. So that's kind of what we're seeing here. We've added more rooms, but in playtests we've actually seen that can result in a lot faster traversal through the space because players don't get stuck as much. One of the other things that we're trying to use with these additional spaces is introducing really simple concepts outside of the puzzle environment, such as currents, such as fish eating food, and in the very first rooms, as you probably saw, introducing simple things even to the level of the hidey hole kind of holes in the wall operate as paths and not just as this habitat for the fish. And these things sound really simple, but they've been really effective at getting players to understand these things a lot more effectively. So yeah, we've also been making some initial very first passes on final asset implementation in this level, but it's still a pretty long way off. And another part of kind of what we have been working towards is kind of starting at the ground up a little bit for our art pipeline for environmental art in this area to kind of really hit it home by the time demo day comes around. So Amanda can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so I'm super excited to have Kate Wong helping us out on art. She's done a lot of wonderful concept art, which I'll show you at the end, and also been leading up a more in-depth environmental concept art system to help handshake with design and inform that process back and forth. What you're seeing here is we've been able to go through and do art paths on certain areas, but not others. So some of this I haven't been able to touch yet, but I'm looking forward to continuing to be more hands-on this semester with environmental art. Here we've entered into a ginormous hidey hole boxfish guy foyer on the way to one of our newer characters, which you'll see soon, which is an electric eel. And in terms of art pipeline, I'll also show some images later and throughout the game. We've created more custom shaders, such as different crystals and particles, to help utilize and make Unity look a little nicer than it does natively. So here's this again, playing with scale. Just turn my flashlight on. So we've developed a language of different puzzle elements, which we then teach the player and reuse in different ways, such as the hidey holes, the boxfish, currents that you can manipulate, currents that you can also play on, currents as a movement system, partially because that's the main way that jellyfish move in the natural world is through flying on currents, swimming on currents, I should say. But overall, our level 1 goals, as Matt mentioned, were to teach the player how to lure fish, manipulate currents, how to use their sonar ability to help locate food and memory jellies, and to really give them more of a sense that they're part of a dynamic ecosystem and show them how to interact with it. So then in areas which are more open, they'll have a language of different things that they can do to interact with the ecosystem in more depth. So in the interest of time, at the end of that level, you encounter a memory jelly room. So basically, you pass by the eel, and then you enter this room, which is a sanctuary, where you reconnect with all these clones of your other immortal jellyfishes as memories. They swim around and they lead you back to the hub. Every time you revert or you unlock one of the memory jelly rooms at the end of a level, you go back to your hub and it's flourishing more with memories. So we'll continue to develop the experience design, emotional design of that feeling of loneliness versus nostalgia as you progress through the game and also through the art style, aesthetics, and sound. So a little bit more about our pipeline. We were focusing a lot more last semester on developing characters and creatures. We have this huge database of these wonderful characters and creatures that we developed, but that we found that the AI capabilities and design capabilities based on we were just really overscoped. So I look forward to using all those guys at some point in the future. But this semester we refocused our art efforts on environment. And as I mentioned, been doing a lot of environment art and also looking at that those perspectives changes between blob and between adult. So here, as you'll see on your left, the transition from blob to adult, concept art by Kate Wong, and then also the sense of scale and perspective when you're a blob as you're approaching that pillow anemone. And here are some more environmental concepts. We found it useful for the art team to do paintovers as well. So a lot of them are working off-site, so we found it really useful to show them our rough gray boxes that we have now and then send those off to them and have them make it feel more flourishing, make it feel more like the look and feel that we're going for. And of course, we've been developing a lot of shaders, as I mentioned. This is a snapshot. I'm glad I included the screenshot since we didn't get to the memory jelly room. But you encounter this memory jelly opal and these colony pieces with the immortal jellyfish polyps and other immortal jellyfish memories that are swimming around and then guide you back to your hub. So just to very quickly go through what we've accomplished. We've accomplished all of these different areas. We've gray boxed and some of them are more final art paths and level design. So it's been a number of different rooms that we've added this semester and also iterated on 0 and 1. What we still need to accomplish are continuing to polish and develop out our existing content and areas and mechanics. And then also overlapping with level 1, when the player goes back through that world for the second time, they will encounter some of our predators from the first semester, such as the prehistoric sharkfish, hawk jelly, and moon jellies. So those will be within this valley, which has just evolved and morphed over time. Some of our other goals are to further integrate blob into adult form, do more focused playtests with our new usability person, and again, continue to increase the legibility of our puzzles and level design. So thank you all very much for listening.